Hello, dear friends hand-waving. Before we dive into today's story, let me thank you for being here. Your time is precious, and the fact that you choose to spend it with me means everything. Sparkling Heart, please remember to subscribe so you won't miss new inspiring stories like this one. I hope this tale brings you reflection, emotion, and maybe even courage. Wishing you a wonderful listening experience, glowing star. Her name was Clara Reynolds. By day, she was Miss Reynolds, the English teacher who stood before rows of teenagers, chalk in hand, guiding them through poems and essays. Her voice was calm, her lessons carefully planned, her smile polite but reserved. She was the sort of teacher students respected but rarely thought about after graduation. But when Clara was alone, in her kitchen late at night, or while walking home under the amber street lights, she carried a secret she never spoke aloud. Clara dreamed of being a singer. Not just any singer. She dreamed of standing beneath hot stage lights, microphone in hand, her voice filling theaters, reaching hearts she could not touch with words alone. From the time she was a child, she had hummed songs to herself. At 16, she won a local talent contest, and the audience's applause had filled her chest with fire. But fire can be frightening when the world pours water over it. Her parents, practical and stern, had called music a hobby. Singing won't pay the bills, Clara, her father told her. Teaching is respectable. Singing is not a real career. So Clara chose the safe path. She went to university, studied literature, earned her degree, and returned to her small hometown to teach. A hidden voice. Clara's apartment was small and quiet. But sometimes, when no one could hear, she would sing. Her voice had grown richer with age, textured with emotion, as if every year of unspoken longing had woven itself into her notes. She kept a notebook full of lyrics hidden under her bed. Songs about hope, about fear, about love she never confessed. In another life, they might have been albums. In this life, they were secrets. Her colleagues at school never knew. They saw her as responsible, dependable Clara. The woman who covered classes when others were sick. The one who organized exams. The one who stayed late to grade essays. If anyone had told them that she dreamed of stages and spotlights, they would have laughed. Or worse, looked at her with pity. That fear, of being laughed at, of being judged, became the chain that kept her dream locked away. The what-ifs. Every year, the local town festival hosted a singing contest. Clara went, sitting quietly in the back, watching teenagers step nervously onto the stage. Some were shaky, some were brilliant. Each year, she whispered to herself, maybe next year I'll try. But the next year never came. Once, when she was 30, a colleague nudged her during the festival. "You have a nice voice, Clara. I've heard you humming. Why don't you get up there?" Clara laughed it off. "Oh no, I couldn't." But deep inside, a small voice screamed, "I want to." She silenced it with politeness, as she always did. Students who saw more. Over the years, Clara taught thousands of students. Some of them noticed something in her. When she read poetry aloud, her voice carried a rhythm, a music that made the words alive. One student, a shy boy named Ethan, once stayed after class. "Miss Reynolds," he asked, "do you sing? You sound like you should." Clara froze. For a heartbeat, she considered confessing. But shame won. "No, Ethan, I just read clearly." The boy nodded, disappointed. Years later, she would still remember his face. The turning point that never turned. At 40, Clara had a chance. A local choir director approached her after hearing her sing softly at a church service. "You have a gift," the woman said. "Would you join us? We need strong voices." Clara almost said yes. She imagined rehearsals, concerts, music shared with others. But the old fear returned. What will people think if they see me? A teacher trying to be a singer? They'll laugh. They'll whisper. They'll say I'm too old. She thanked the director but declined. That night, she wept quietly in her apartment. She told herself she was being sensible. But the truth was, she was afraid. The weight of silence. Years passed. Her hair turned silver at the edges. Her students changed, generations cycling through. But Clara remained the same. Miss Reynolds, the steady teacher. Inside, though, regret grew heavier. It pressed on her chest when she sang alone at night. It burned when she saw young singers on TV, living the life she once dreamed of. She told herself it was too late now. Too late to start. Too late to risk. Too late to be laughed at. But the too late had begun when she was young. And it followed her like a shadow into middle age. One evening, after a particularly long day of teaching, Clara sat by her window, watching the town lights flicker. She whispered a song under her breath, one of her own, never sung aloud before. The melody rose into the night, fragile and beautiful. And for a moment, she imagined an audience out there in the dark, listening. But when the song ended, the silence that followed was crushing. She laid her head against the glass and whispered, "What have I done with my voice?" The year Clara turned 45, she cleaned out the supply closet at school and found a dusty boombox and a stack of CDs labeled School Talent Night, 2003 to 2012. On a whim, she carried them to her classroom and, after the final bell, slipped one into the tray. The speakers crackled, past voices returned. A girl with a trembly vibrato. A boy rapping too fast for his breath. A shy duet that accidentally became harmony. The room filled with ghosts of courage. Clara sat behind her desk and listened until dusk. When she finally turned the player off, the silence felt like an accusation and a plea. How many nights had she deferred to, maybe next year? How many times had she mistaken caution for wisdom? Outside, the hallways were empty. She shut off the lights, humming under her breath as she locked the door. The hum became a melody she knew by heart, one of the songs from the notebook under her bed. It fit her throat like a key fits a lock. She stopped at the stairwell when footsteps echoed, as if caught doing something indecent. "Evening, Miss Reynolds," said the janitor, sweeping with a rhythm that matched the song she'd just strangled. "Good evening, Mr. Hall," she said, voice bland and ordinary, the way she had trained it to be. The following spring, a new music teacher arrived, Ms. Alder, young and eager, with a speaking voice that held a melody even in attendance lists. On the first faculty meeting, she stood to announce a community coffeehouse night. Anyone could perform, students, parents, teachers. "The goal is to make music less scary," she said, grinning. "And raise money for the library." Laughter and polite applause. Someone cracked a joke about juggling librarians. Then Ms. Alder added, "Miss Reynolds, I've heard you read poetry. You've got a singer's breath. Will you do a piece with us?" 18 pairs of eyes slid toward Clara. Heat flooded her cheeks. 100 answers crowded her throat. "I'm busy. I'm terrible. I don't sing. I can't." She chose the safest. "I'll help with the flyers," she said. "And refreshments." After the meeting, Ms. Alder caught her in the hallway. "No pressure," she said softly, as if approaching a nervous bird. "But if there's a song inside you, we'll hold it gently." Clara smiled the way people smile when someone has said something too kind and too accurate. "I appreciate that," she said, and fled. She made beautiful flyers. She arranged trays of brownies. She poured coffee. When the night came, She stationed herself at the back of the auditorium with a roll of tickets and a paper float. She applauded until her palms stung. A father with a guitar, a teacher's quartet, a girl who forgot the second verse, found it, and kept going. The audience's kindness was a physical thing. Last call for performers. Ms. Alder chirped between acts. Anyone else want to jump in? We're all friends here. Clara's heart pounded against her ribs like a fist on a locked door. She stepped into the aisle, then stepped back. Her body knew how to move forward. Her fear held the leash. On her way home, she cut through the park, the night draped in a soft wind. She sat on a bench and sang the song she would have sung, barely louder than the leaves. No one heard her except the trees and the river. Both were generous and said nothing. At school, the kids kept changing and the patterns stayed the same. In a unit on performance poetry, she coached even the shy ones to stand and speak their lines. Your voice is allowed to take up space, she told them, and hoped her hypocrisy didn't stain the lesson. One afternoon, a junior named Mira lingered after class. She was the kind of student teachers remember, earnest, observant, sharp as a sewing needle where it mattered. Miss Reynolds, she said, twisting her backpack strap, can you look at these lyrics? Clara read the page, clumsy in places, honest in others, a 15-year-old's hurricane. She circled rhythm where it worked, added, line break, where breath wanted to live. You're telling the truth, she said. Now choose your verbs with a knife. Mira laughed. You should write songs. I don't, Clara said reflexively. Then you should, Mira said, and left the room like a punctuation mark. That night, Clara pulled the notebook from under the bed and read through her old pages. Scraps and bridges, a chorus that still rang true, a verse that belonged to a younger mouth. She added a line to the margin. I tell others to be brave because I want to learn the language of it myself. The next day, she gave Mira back the marked-up lyrics. It's better when you sing the truth, she said. How do you know? Mira asked. Clara folded her hands so they wouldn't shake. Because I hear it. Her father died that winter, quietly, without drama, as if he had always intended to leave a small footprint. At the wake, well-meaning relatives used phrases that bruised even as they tried to comfort. He was proud of you, teacher. He was glad you chose stability. In the church basement after the service, Clara found herself staring at the old upright piano shoved into a corner by a bulletin board. It had missing ivories and a chipped leg and the look of something that used to be useful. She lifted the fallboard. The keys were cold under her fingers. She played a simple progression, then another. The room emptied, the sound warmed. She sang his favorite hymn in a key that fit her like a borrowed coat that happened to be the right size. Halfway through the second verse, her mother's cousin slipped in and stood quietly. When Clara finished, the cousin put a hand on her shoulder. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know you carried that kind of light. Clara closed the lid. Neither do I, she said, truthfully. Her mother, practical as ever, divided the estate in even columns. In the miscellaneous household line, she wrote piano to Clara, not because she believed in Clara's music, but because no one else had room. 2 weeks later, the instrument arrived at Clara's apartment on the backs of 2 groaning movers. It took up half of her living room and all of her excuses. She polished the wood, set a plant on top, and told herself she would play it on weekends. On a Tuesday night she couldn't sleep, she played it instead. The piano didn't ask what people would think. The piano didn't mind that she was 47. The piano didn't know the difference between a teacher doing chores and a woman making art. It just asked for touch and gave back sound. The internet made visibility cheap and exposure harsh. Clara watched as younger colleagues posted clips of themselves singing at bars and weddings, racking up likes from students who called them legends. She envied their shamelessness. She told herself she was old enough to be allergic to the public square. Still, she recorded herself once, propped the phone on a stack of books, pressed the red circle, and sang a verse and chorus of a standard. She played it back. The sound startled her. Warmer than fear had predicted, thinner than fantasy had promised, holding ache like a note holds overtones. She saved the file as test M4A and didn't share it. She watched it twice more that week. Then she recorded a second, a third. She labeled them with dates like entries in a calendar only she could see. If I ever, she wrote in a folder title, trailing off. At Thanksgiving, her sister, blunt, kind, asked why Clara's piano had a layer of sheet music 6 inches deep and no dust. Clara risked truth in a small dose. I've been singing, she said. Then sing in front of someone who can clap, her sister replied, and changed the subject to stuffing. Mira made the regionals in a youth songwriting contest and brought her newest lyrics to room 214. I think I need a bridge, she said. Every song on YouTube has a bridge. Clara gestured to the chair by her desk. They built one together. 2 lines that rose, 2 that broke, a line that told the secret without preaching it. When Mira sang it under her breath, goosebumps rose on Clara's arms. Pride and envy were a braid. She decided to honor the pride strand. You should come to the finals, Mira said. They let teachers sit up front. I'll be there, Clara said. She almost added I'll bring a throat that understands what you're doing and did not. At the finals, Mira forgot a chord, laughed into the mic, started again, and won 3rd place. Backstage, she hugged Clara like gratitude had a shape. I want to do this, she whispered. I think I really want to. Then build your life around the want, Clara said, gut twisting even as her voice stayed steady. And don't wait for permission that no one can give. She went home and stared at the piano until the room blurred. The spring she turned 50, the school announced a centennial gala, alumni, donors, a silent auction, and a formal program featuring the best of our community. The principal's email was cheerful. Staff performances welcome. Let's showcase our hidden talents. Ms. Alder found her at lunch with a flyer. We're putting together a small jazz ensemble, she said. I know you can read lead sheets. Do one song with us. Just one. It'll be buried between speeches. No one will throw tomatoes. Clara stared at her salad as if it contained guidance. The word jazz scared her less than ensemble. Ensembles shared courage like bread. Which song? She asked, then regretted the question like a text you can't unsend. Autumn Leaves, Ms. Alder said. It sits low. Your voice likes stories. This is one. They rehearsed in the music room after school, shelves smelling of brass polish and paper. The pianist, Mr. Hall's nephew, a substitute with lightning in his left hand, played the changes with enough warmth to hide mistakes. Ms. Alder kept time with a tap of her pencil on the stand. On the 3rd rehearsal, alone in the room with the piano, Clara sang the full tune for the first time into space not labeled private. No microphone, no audience, just wood, air, and the feeling of standing on a small, safe cliff. When the last note thinned into the rafters, Ms. Alder stepped from the hall. Don't kill me, she said, but that was beautiful. Clara gripped the back of a chair. Praise made her dizzy. Beautiful, her father would have said, would never have said, had he been a different man in a different house. She nodded instead. "I'll do the gala," she said, and it felt like borrowing shoes you might actually walk in. She told no one else. She did not invite her sister. She did not mention it in the staff room. She rehearsed 4 times and then canceled the 5th because the whisper started. What if you fail publicly? What if they look at you and see a midlife crisis with sheet music? What if a student records you and you become a meme? The week of the gala, a senior prank surfaced online. A mashup of teachers' quirks cut into a rap. It was mostly harmless, edged with the gleeful cruelty of youth. Clara's cameo, her tapping a pencil 4 times before speaking, was minor and not unkind. Still, it spread like humidity. By Wednesday, she could hear it echo in the halls. That night, she emailed Ms. Alder, "I'm sorry. I can't. Something came up." She stared at the lie until shame burned a hole in it and hit send anyway. On Friday, she sat in the audience while another teacher filled her slot with a safe comedy routine. The ensemble played without her. Autumn Leaves was replaced by Route 66, which got polite claps. Clara smiled at the right places and applauded on cue. During the dessert reception, a donor buoyed by Chardonnay asked, "Do you ever perform, Miss Reynolds?" "No," she said, the word tasting like old coins. "No, I don't." Regret became heavier but quieter. It stopped shouting and started humming, a constant undersong to her days. She learned to do chores with it, to sleep with it, to grate around it. A thing can be bearable and still be a tragedy. One Saturday in June, she took the long bus to the city and found an open mic in a basement cafe. The kind of room where courage comes in mugs and no one expects a miracle. She put her name on the list as C. Ray, as if an alias could hold the trembling. She sat through a poet who rhymed love with above 5 times, a barista with a ukulele and a heartbreak, a man in a suit who recited Neruda because his wife loved Neruda and she was gone. When the MC called, "C. Ray," Clara stood. The room tilted. She reached the mic and put one hand on the piano to keep the rest of her from running. "First time," she said into the mic, voice small but audible. "Welcome," the MC said, and stepped back in a gesture that looked like trust. Clara looked down, then up, then out. In the second row, a woman nodded like encouragement could be contagious. In the back, a man scrolled without looking up. The pianist, an old guy with a denim jacket and a hearing aid, whispered, "What key?" "G," she said automatically, and realized her mouth had answered a question her fear hadn't heard. He counted her in. She sang 3 bars before panic picked her up by the shoulders and carried her off the stage. "I'm sorry," she blurted, and fled into the bathroom, where she locked a stall and pressed both palms to her eyes until lights popped. The crowd murmured, then moved on. The MC said something kind. Someone else sang. She washed her face and left by the side door. Outside, the night smelled like wet concrete and possibility she'd once again refused. On the bus home, she opened her notebook and wrote one sentence. "Cowardice is a kind of theft, from the self you could have been." Summer school gave her quieter halls and time to think. She reorganized her classroom, put the piano by the window instead of hiding it in a corner, even though it wasn't a music room. "Miss Reynolds, why do you have a piano?" a freshman asked on the first day of remedial composition. "To prove a point," she said. "What point?" "That some tools exist whether or not we've earned them," she added, after a beat, "and that we can still learn them." She let the students free write to instrumentals once a week. Some called it cringe. Some wrote their truest lines under the cover of a beat. She sang one scale on a dare and turned red and laughed with them when her voice cracked on the top note. It mattered that she cracked and did not die. In August, Mira came to say goodbye before heading to college for music. She wore bravery like new shoes. "Will you come to a show when I'm back?" she asked. "I will," Clara said. "Will you sing somewhere before then?" Mira pressed, smiling. "One open mic, one choir rehearsal, one song to the plant on your piano with the window open so someone could hear if they tried." "I'll try," Clara said, meaning it in the smallest, realest sense. After she left, Clara rehearsed "Autumn Leaves" to the metronome's soft insistence until the song learned her mouth again. She played with keys and wore the low notes like a shawl. She didn't make any grand promises to the night. She made tea and slept. The new school year brought committees and hand sanitizer and more reasons not to do the dangerous thing. The PTA planned a harvest fundraiser with raffle baskets and a stage for ambient entertainment. The principal sent a list of slots to fill. Clara typed an email volunteering to read a poem and saved it to drafts. She opened another composing window and typed, "One song, 3 minutes." She saved that to drafts too. She went home, ate soup, graded essays about symbolism. At midnight, she deleted the poem draft and left the song draft waiting. In bed, she practiced saying one sentence. "I am Miss Reynolds, and I will be singing." She said it once aloud. The ceiling accepted it without comment. On the morning sign-up deadline, her cursor hovered over send until the bell for third period rang and the world made her decide. She closed the window. She closed the door. She went to teach. In the afternoon, a former student popped his head in. "Ethan, older, beard, art school hoodie. I heard you're still here," he said, grinning. "I came to drop off a thank you. You taught me poets aren't embarrassing. That saved me freshman year." "Ethan," she said, surprised into a smile. "What are you making?" "Installations. A lot of noise, literally," he laughed. "Also, I sing in a terrible band. We're very sincere." "Being sincere is not terrible," she said, before she could help herself. He tilted his head. "You ever sing?" The question hit the same place it had years ago and a different place, too. She looked at the piano by the window, the one that no longer hid. "I want to," she said. The honesty startled them both. "Then I'm going to pretend you said you do," he replied, "and I'm going to ask if I can come hear you sometime." "You may," she said, and after he left, she sat at the piano and played the first 8 bars of "Autumn Leaves" to the empty chairs. Room 214 held the notes without dropping any. She reopened her drafts and hit send on the second email. Immediately, she wanted to take it back. Immediately, the principal replied, "Wonderful. You're on at 7:10 p.m. Ms. Alder will accompany if you like." Clara stared at the screen, pulse loud. She stood, closed the door, and sang one verse into the quiet with her hand on the back of a chair, grounding herself to wood and work. When she finished, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt like someone who had finally paid the first dollar of an old debt. She told almost no one. She practiced for 10 minutes a day, slow and honest, as if rebuilding a muscle, which she was. She wrote her students' names in the margins of her lead sheet, Mira, Ethan, the freshman, because accountability can be borrowed from those who believe you can be larger than your fear. On the night of the harvest fundraiser, she arrived early with a tin of cookies and an extra pair of shoes. She watched a string quartet of 8th graders play with adorable concentration. She watched a local baker auction a cake that glowed. She thought of leaving twice and did not. At 7:04, Ms. Alder met her backstage. "You've got this," she said. "If you forget a line, hum. We'll find you." "And if I run?" Clara asked, half joking, half not. I'll block the door, Ms. Alder said, smiling like a coach who knows the play you need. Clara held the mic and felt its weight. She walked on stage. The house lights softened the room into candles. Parents sipped cider. Kids fidgeted. A few students saw her and did tiny double takes, like a character stepping off the page. "Good evening," she said, and the mic gave her small voice to the back row. "I'm Miss Reynolds. She stopped, breathed, and began again. "I'll be singing Autumn Leaves." Ms. Alder counted her in. The first note was thin. The second sat. The third found bone. She sang the song like a letter, not a performance. Line by line, image by image, letting the words carry their own weather. She didn't soar. She didn't collapse. She told the story, and her voice, almost in surprise, told it back. When she finished, the applause was warm and human-sized. The way applause is when a room understands it has witnessed something ordinary and brave. She bowed her head and left the stage with knees that remembered how to shake. Backstage, Ms. Alder hugged her. "You did it," she whispered. Clara exhaled and laughed, a wet sound that embarrassed her and felt like release. "I did the smallest possible brave thing," she said. "The size was perfect," Ms. Alder replied. That night, at home, Clara placed her notebook on top of the piano instead of under the bed. She made tea, turned on a lamp, and wrote, "I have been a steward of other people's courage for decades. Tonight I borrowed a cup for myself." She went to bed with the window cracked. Somewhere, someone on the next block was singing along to the radio, off-key and unashamed. She envied them less than usual. In the morning, she would wake to an email from the principal thanking her, to a note from Ethan, "Heard a rumor you sang. Proud of you," and to a slip of paper in her mailbox from a parent, "Your voice made me cry. Thank you for being brave where my daughter could see." She would also wake to the old fear, stretching and yawning like a roommate who paid rent on time. She would sit at breakfast and ask it to be quiet while she graded. But at lunch, she would write a date at the top of a page. Open mic, City, October 28th. She would draw a box beside it and leave it unchecked. For the first time in decades, the unchecked box felt like a promise instead of a verdict. Hello again, dear listeners. Cherry Blossom. Thank you so much for staying with me on this journey. Your support, your comments, and your time mean the world. Please remember to subscribe so you never miss another story, and thank you, from my heart, for listening today. I hope this chapter inspires you and reminds you that every small act of courage matters. Glowing star. The fall fundraiser had changed something in Clara, but it had not erased the old fear. Courage was not a switch, it was a daily negotiation. She woke some mornings with lightness in her chest, humming while she made coffee. Other mornings, the memory of applause felt like a trick of imagination, fragile and unbelievable. Still, the notebook remained on top of the piano. Still, she sang a little each night, even when her voice was tired. And she had written a date. October 28th, open mic, a return to the basement cafe. On that Saturday, Clara stood outside the same cafe where she had once fled from the stage. Her breath fogged in the autumn chill. Inside, voices rose and fell, laughter against mugs. She pressed her palm against the door but didn't push. "I can leave," she told herself. "No one expects me here." But then she remembered Myra's eyes, the gratitude in Ethan's voice, the parent's note. "Thank you for being brave where my daughter could see." She pushed the door open. The basement was lit with strings of warm bulbs. The MC, a young woman in a red scarf, welcomed everyone as if they were old friends. The sign-up sheet trembled when Clara wrote, "See Ray, again." her hand less shaky than before. She listened to others. A woman reciting poetry about divorce, a boy with a guitar too large for his frame, a man with a harmonica who played with his eyes closed. They were not perfect, but they were present. When her turn came, Clara's knees wobbled. She sat at the piano this time, grounding herself in wood and keys. "I'll be singing Autumn Leaves," she said quietly. The pianist was herself. Her fingers moved, hesitant but steady. And when she began to sing, the words came not as performance, but as truth. "The falling leaves drift by my window." Her voice was smaller than she had imagined all her life, but also more honest. Each note carried her years of silence, her years of regret, her years of longing. When she finished, the applause was not thunderous, but it was real. Warm, respectful. Someone in the back shouted, "Beautiful." Clara's eyes blurred. She bowed, whispered, "Thank you," and walked back to her chair. This time, she did not flee. Ripples of courage. The next week, one of her students slipped a note onto her desk. It said, "Saw you at the cafe. You sing like you read poetry. Thank you for showing us it's okay to try." Clara folded the note carefully and placed it in her notebook. More students began to ask questions. "Miss Reynolds, do you sing?" She no longer said, "No." Instead, she said, "Sometimes." Mira, now at college, emailed her. "I heard from friends you're performing. I'm so proud of you. Keep going." Clara wrote back, "I'm trying. Thank you for showing me how." A chance she couldn't take. In the spring, Ms. Alder invited Clara to join a small ensemble for a regional educators conference. "It's low pressure," she said. "Just a few songs, no big deal. We'd love your voice." Clara wanted to say yes. She even imagined the stage, the hotel ballroom, the audience of teachers who would understand nerves. But fear tightened around her ribs. What if I forget the words? What if I embarrass the school? She shook her head. "Thank you, but I can't." Ms. Alder looked at her, disappointment softened by compassion. "You're ready, Clara. I hope one day you'll believe it." That night, Clara sat at her piano and wept. She hated the way fear stole opportunities, hated the way regret grew heavier each time she said no. She wrote in her notebook, "I have walked past too many open doors." Growing older, the years slipped by. 60 came quietly, like a shadow at dusk. Her students seemed younger every year. She seemed older, her energy stretched thin. But she kept teaching. She kept singing at the piano in her apartment. Every once in a while, she performed at the cafe. Not every month, not even every season, but enough that some regulars recognized her. "Hey, it's C. Ray," they would say. She never chased fame, never recorded an album, never stood on a grand stage. Each time an opportunity came, a choir, a bigger venue, a collaboration, she hesitated, and fear won. And so, her songs remained small, tucked into corners, heard by a few but never the many. The weight of regret. At 70, Clara retired from teaching. Her colleagues gave her flowers, a plaque, and speeches about dedication. They praised her for her decades of service, for shaping generations of students. Clara smiled, accepted the applause, and thought, "I shaped them with words, but I never showed them the song in me." Her apartment was quieter now. The piano keys were worn smooth where her fingers had traveled thousands of times. She sang less often, her voice thinner, but the regret louder. Sometimes she sat by the window and imagined the life she might have had. Tours, albums, concerts. A life where she had been brave enough to say yes. A letter to herself. One night, she opened her notebook and wrote a final letter. "To the girl I was. You could have sung. You should have sung. Fear stole from us both. But when you did let the voice out, even in small places, it mattered. It touched a handful of hearts. I hope that is enough." She closed the notebook, set it on the piano, and whispered, "I'm sorry." The silence that answered was both cruel and kind. "Hello again, my dear listeners, Cherry Blossom. Thank you for being here with me, for giving your time, your attention, and your hearts to this story. Please remember to subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories like this one. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope today's chapter touches you deeply. Sparkling Heart. The quiet years. In retirement, Clara's days became slower. The rhythm of bells and school schedules had ended, leaving silence that sometimes felt like freedom and sometimes like loneliness. Her apartment still smelled faintly of chalk and books, though the piano was now the center of her world. She played each morning, not for practice, not for an audience, but to remember she was still alive. Her voice, though thinner and rougher, still carried warmth, but regret sat with her like a longtime friend. She often thought, "I taught children to be brave, yet I never truly was. I built a life of safety, not of song." The visit. One crisp autumn afternoon, there was a knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Mira, no longer a teenager, but a grown woman, confident, radiant, with a guitar case slung across her back. "Miss Reynolds," Mira said, eyes shining. "I was in town. I had to see you." Clara invited her in. They sat by the piano, tea steaming between them. Mira spoke of concerts, albums, songs written in dorm rooms and sung in cities Clara had never seen. "I wouldn't be here without you," Mira said softly. "You told me to be brave. You gave me my first bridge." Clara's eyes filled. "And I wasn't brave myself." "That's not true," Mira said firmly. "I saw you sing. I saw you stand up even when you wanted to run. That gave me courage. Don't dismiss it. You mattered." Recording the voice. Mira opened her guitar case and smiled. "I brought my portable recorder. Sing with me?" Clara froze. Fear flickered, even now. But then she thought, what do I have left to lose? She sat at the piano. Her fingers found the opening chords of Autumn Leaves. Mira strummed softly, harmonizing under her. Clara sang, her voice fragile but full of soul, carrying not only melody but decades of longing. When they finished, Mira whispered, "Beautiful. The world needs to hear this." Clara shook her head. "The world doesn't, but maybe someone does." A legacy of song. Weeks later, Mira sent her a link. She had uploaded the recording to a small online channel, titled simply, "Miss Reynolds, Autumn Leaves." Clara hesitated before clicking. When she finally listened, tears slid down her cheeks. It was imperfect, her voice cracked, the piano faltered, but it was hers. Honest, true. To her surprise, comments appeared. "So moving. Her voice carries real life in it. Thank you for sharing this." Clara smiled, heart heavy and light at the same time. She whispered, maybe it wasn't too late. The last performance. That winter, Mira invited Clara to a small community concert. "Just one song," she said. "No pressure. Just neighbors and friends." Clara agreed. She wore a simple black dress, her hair silver now, her hands trembling as she approached the piano. The audience was small, children, families, retirees. "I've spent most of my life teaching others to be brave," she said into the mic. "Tonight, I'm trying to teach myself." She sang softly, gently, as though offering the audience a fragile gift. And when she finished, the applause was warm enough to melt years of regret. The final days. Clara grew older, her voice quieter, but she kept singing. Alone in her apartment, to the piano, to the plants, to the night air drifting through the open window. One evening, her sister found her asleep at the piano, her notebook open to a final entry. I may never have sung on great stages, but I sang where it mattered, to students, to friends, to myself. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps it always was. After she was gone, when Clara passed, Mira organized a small memorial concert. Former students, teachers, and neighbors gathered. At the center of the program, Mira played the recording of Clara's Autumn Leaves. As the song filled the room, people wept, smiled, and remembered the quiet teacher who had taught them words, courage, and, in her own way, song. She thought she wasn't brave, Mira told the audience. But she taught us all how to sing. The applause that followed was not just for the song, but for the life behind it, fragile, hesitant, but still a melody. And in that moment, Clara's voice lived on. Closing. Dear listeners, thank you for being part of this story's sparkling heart. Remember, it is never too late to chase your dream, never too late to sing your song, even if only one person hears it. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and join me for more. Your support keeps these stories alive, and may you always have the courage to let your own voice be heard. Rose Musical Notes.